Chris, Win or Learn, episode 7 this week. We have been absolutely buzzing for this all week. An absolute hero in our eyes and friend. And this episode, we're going to start talking to Emily McInnes.
You got that right. Well done, pal.
I've just been under pressure here, pronouncing that incorrectly. But no, Emily McInnes is a nurse, been working on the frontline during the pandemic over the last 12 months. A hero in our eyes, and we really want to take this episode to celebrate her as a person.
We do, yes.
And as a friend. So Emily, how are you? Are you doing well? Are you looking forward to the podcast?
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. What a lovely introduction. Don't give me all that credit.
No, let's get into it, mate. I think.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, yeah, hello Emily, you're looking very well, and thank you very much for giving us your time to join and share your story and experience of past sort of 12 months, I guess. And we want to start by asking you, I mean, I remember when we went into lockdown in the UK, I sat in a pub, I think it was a Friday afternoon, and next thing you know, we were going to be shut for 3 weeks. And I was like, how are we going to get through this? 12 months later, we're still here.
Yeah.
But obviously, in your eyes, the NHS, the spiraling rumours of the coronavirus and COVID sort of spread, from China. And those caught us off guard as a nation.
Yeah.
How did that sort of leak into the NHS and then really rapidly accelerate and overwhelm you guys? And it'd just be good to sort of understand right from the start, from your eyes, how that took off.
Well, so obviously usually I'm in paediatrics, and I've been there the last it was 3.5 years at the point where the pandemic started. And then I just remember that week where all the numbers were going through the roof, and there was rumours of lockdown. There was loads of rumours in the hospital, basically not really sure what was going to happen. And then there were things so we have ventilators in paediatrics, and then the adult service. So I'm at a hospital where it's paediatrics and adults. And then the adult services, the intensive care, they started coming down, taking some of our ventilators. And then we just kind of heard the rumours how short staffed it was upstairs. So we were kind of in this weird state where we were thinking, fortunately paediatrics is quite quiet. But we were kind of thinking oh God, what's going to happen now? They're taking ventilators from paediatrics. The staffing is awful upstairs. So we were all to be honest, a bit terrified. And it was kind of there in the pipeline, there was a potential that we might go up to adult services, and all of us being paediatric nurses, obviously we're used to tiny people. So the thought of going into adults was terrifying. And also intensive care, it's a different environment to what I'm currently working in. So we were all terrified. And then quite quickly, things progressed. And that was the first week, I think that was literally the week that they must have announced, or the week before they announced the lockdown. And then a week later, there was quite a few of us that got redeployed to adult services. So we went up to adult ITU and were basically just thrown in the deep end. But it's all that we could do.
So right at the start, were you quite shielded from it a little bit, even though you were in the hospital and you were, going about your day job? Were you still a little bit unaware of what was going on? Because obviously adults and paediatrics completely separate. You were just still hearing rumours. What was that like? Did you, when they said, oh, you have to go to adult, was there any expectation that you might have to go, or did they just sort of say you have to go next Monday and get in there? And then what was that like? Because have you ever dealt with adult services at all?
No, well, that was the thing. And I think the weird thing is that all of us paediatric nurses felt, so we were really quiet in paediatrics, not really sure why. I guess it was kind of coming to the end of winter. So generally in paediatrics, the winter's the worst months, because of all children are susceptible to colds, coughs, flu, etc. So kind of coming to the end of winter. So we as paediatric service was getting quieter. And then obviously we heard how busy upstairs were. So we almost felt a bit guilty, because we were we're actually having a fine time in paediatrics, but we could just see that upstairs we're really struggling, and then obviously doctors coming down and intensive care staff coming to get ventilators. We almost felt a bit helpless to begin with, because we were just we want to help, and also obviously this is the first pandemic we've been in, so we knew that a lot was going on upstairs in intensive care, but it's about you're in a situation where you can't go up yet because we haven't been told to go up, but you feel bad that we're not really that busy and doing anything, so you want to be part of it, you want to help. But then obviously there's the element where we are pediatric trained, we're not adult trained. But then I guess some sort of what we kind of thought was although our background is paediatrics, ultimately it's the same kind of principle, whether you're like paediatrics, adults, it's at the end of the day, it's human that you're looking after. Yes, children are a lot smaller than adults, and there's a lot of, you know, differences in like the anatomy and physiology and all of that. But on the whole, like in terms of your basic nursing, like we were like, do you know what, we could do this. Like, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a massive challenge. But we're in a pandemic. What else can you do? It's better that they're actually getting some help than no help. And ultimately, like, it would come to the point where it would be in a situation where actually that patient hasn't got a nurse to look after them. So it's better than having a nurse that might be paediatric trained and doing everything they can than that patient having no one. So we were all for it. We were like, do you know what? It's a rubbish situation for everyone. But we can't like bear the thought of all the nurses upstairs being overworked and stressed. So basically, if we could help, we were happy to. And then, so we kind of like put it out there, like, obviously if they need us, then yeah, we're happy to go. And then quite quickly that changed. Like, we had, I'm trying to think now. I think it was like, we had like a meeting that happened quite quickly. And it was like a bed meeting, like the whole of the hospital, all the people high up were there. And it was quite quickly like, okay, things are really bad now. Like, you need to go upstairs to adults. And once we were, I think it must have been like a week later. I think less than that, maybe like 4 days later, we were assigned to adult ITU, and our whole rota that was in paediatrics just went up there. So there was obviously still people running the paediatric services, but on the whole, that was really quiet, because like coronavirus hasn't really been affecting children in the same way that it has been affecting adults. So and then for the next 3 months, our rota was up in adult intensive care, and my goodness, like it's crazy. Like, it was like something out of a film. Like, you literally have been like, with nursing, it's very much like, you can't do this until you're competent and signed off on this. Like, it's all about like competencies, being signed off, feeling comfortable to do it, and then it's like a safe to practice kind of thing. And it had gone from like the whole time I've been nursing to getting everything signed off to like, okay, you actually have no choice. You just got to get yourself up there and do it. So it was one of those situations where I think like the intense atmosphere of it, you did just work so hard. Like, I mean, generally in nursing, you work really hard anyway because you have to and you want to. But it was a situation where it's like, at the end of the day, if I don't get myself involved and if I don't do this, then someone's going to die. So you just got to do it. You get on with it. And it's amazing how much you pick up quickly. Like, you literally are thrown in the deep end. You've been given an intubated, ventilated patient. You're by yourself. You never looked after one before, but you just have to go through like your general nursing, the safety, like what we call it, like your A to E assessment. You just go through all of that, and suddenly like you're in a situation, and it's almost like the adrenaline and everything. You just get on with it. And then obviously, so we were there for 3 months in total. By the end, like within a few weeks, you were quite like, you picked things up very, very quickly because you had no choice to. And then you kind of get into it, and actually it went from like the fear and like the anxiety, which was kind of like overridden by like the adrenaline that was getting you through it. And then you kind of, after like a week or two, you were like, right, like, we're in a pandemic, let's do this. And then you were kind of just like so driven and motivated, and you were so like touched by all of the patients, because like the patients there, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling on.
No, please carry on.
This is incredible. This is for you to have the floor, so keep going.
Like the patients there, like a lot of them were like 50, 60, like 70, like, so all of our parents' age, like, so the whole time that you're there, you're just thinking, oh, that could be my mom, that could be my dad, my auntie, my uncle. So I think from that point of view, like, you were just so like, I've got to help these people. I want to do everything I can to help them, because this literally could be my mom in that bed or whatever. And then you literally just did not stop. Like, all like your whole everything, like your whole heart, everything just was like fully in it. Like, you just wanted to help them, basically. So yeah, but I mean, it was tough, it was really hard, but I look back on it and I think, do you know what, they were like a crazy 3 months. And then I did go back for a little bit, like this second wave, but I've now moved to hospital, so I'm not actually in adult service anymore. But yeah, like, I look back at it and I think, God, they were like the hardest 3 months ever, like so like emotionally and physically draining, so tough. But I do look back and I just think like the whole of the NHS has just done so well. I mean, they still are doing incredibly, but obviously at that point there was no it was very much like there was no contingency plan. Like they didn't prepare for a pandemic. All of a sudden, all of this was happening. And there was no plan, like literally no one had a plan. It was like on the spot planning. So everything was just like all over the place. So I just think the fact that like the whole of the NHS just pulled together and did loads of things out of their comfort zone, but like got through it. And I know sadly a lot of people have died, but then a lot of people have got through it and they wouldn't have done if people didn't pull together, basically. So I look back and I think
that's incredible.
Like those 3 months were like incredible, but like terrifying, but horrendous, but like basically an array of emotions those 3 months. But
sounds a bit different to what me and you do. I mean, the pressures are mad.
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out for me out of all of that is, you know, when we are taught or asked to learn a new skill, like we can apply, it's laptop based, we can learn a skill, but you're dealing with people's lives. And you know, I can't even tell you how much we commend you for what you just said. You know, you're dealing with people. This is their lives and yours. You know, you were thrown in at the deep end. I want to talk about you and your personal experience. How were you feeling when you were going home at night in between all of this? And you know, it's been incredible insight from what was going on, you know, in work point of view. But you know, part of the reason why we do this is to learn about people and share stories. And it'd just be really good to understand how you were feeling when you know, behind closed doors about this all.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of like nurses and doctors would all say the same. Like it was like a roller coaster, like up and down. Like you'd be like, oh my god, like the very beginning it was like, oh, this is terrifying. Like, but there was like an element of like, oh, like what's going on up there? Because I think as well, you're so detached from it. Like, so you see it on the news, you see it in the media. And at this point, there was no, like, when we first went up, there was no media released in terms of like, so we see it now, everyone in their PPE on the adult intensive care. There's been loads of there's loads of clips on the news and whatnot, and there's been like some documentaries on it. But at first, you just have no idea, so you don't even know what to expect. You can't even picture it, basically. And then you get there and you're like, oh my god, like this actually is crazy. Like, I mean, you've got to imagine it, you've got all these sick patients on ventilators, and then you just got everyone in PPE and you can literally see their eyes. So it was mad. So I think there was, to begin with, it was that kind of like the fear of the unknown, like the anxiety. But then there was almost that element of, not, I don't want to say excitement, but it was like, oh, like what actually is going on up there? Because we've been hearing about it on the news, what is the situation? And then it was like the terror where you're like, oh my goodness, this is actually a thing. This is real. Like, it's not just on the news anymore. Like, you feel very close to it rather than that detachment. And then it's like, we've got this, come on, let's all just do our thing. You know, we can only do our best, but like, we're here to help and we want to do this. So then I think you kind of ride on adrenaline a lot and you get through that. But then, I mean, but within any situation, unfortunately, in healthcare, it is very up and down. Like, you'll have your good days and you're like, wow, I feel like I did loads that shift. And then you'll have your bad, like, as in I really helped that shift. And you'll have your bad days where like you've done everything you can. And then obviously, you know, people die, people are really sick. You've got, you know, the poor families, the other end that can't be with them. So I think, you know, it's very much, I do think it's like, people say it's like the power of the uniform, and like being in a hospital setting where when you're in the zone, you get on with it, and you just you have to hold back tears at times, but you do it because at the end of the day, my mindset is whatever's going on with that patient and their poor family, like they're in a so much worse situation than me and we are. So like you don't even feel like you can get upset. And then it's like kind of when you come home. And then there were times where it's like it suddenly hits you and you're like, oh my god, the things that I've seen that day, like, gosh, I never thought I would see it at all in my life. And then it's those times when you're like, it kind of hits you and you have your bad days and you need someone to kind of motivate you to pick you up again. Need a little cry, a little vent to people. I mean, I'm very fortunate, so my mum's also a nurse. So the amount of times, bless her, that I rang her because anyone in healthcare, like, people will try to understand, but actually they won't unless they're a nurse themselves. They just won't have that same kind of understanding. Not like no fault of anyone else. It's lovely that people do try and understand. But yeah, I mean, there's different people you can go to for different things. But I think ultimately it's got me through the pandemic. It was like talking to my mum. And my other nursing friends, and obviously all my close friends as well. And Callum's been amazing, but you know, he's like he wouldn't really understand what was going on. He'd listen and cheer me up and make me laugh, and that's all I really needed, because he obviously didn't really get the medical side of things. But do you know what, sometimes it's nice not actually to have someone that doesn't understand it, and they can be like, do you know what, that's it, let's watch a film, let's have a giggle, let's do whatever. So yeah.
No, but Emily, I wanted to just take a step back, because at the start you said it's very similar. The principles are the same from pediatrics to adults, because obviously these are people, we're just humans. But when you're actually into, I think you said ITU, when you're actually in there and you're dealing with grown men, grown women, you know, fathers, mothers, grandparents and stuff like that, what was it actually like inside the ITU? You've said that you saw some stuff that you never thought you'd see. Don't know if you can go into any detail about that, but just give us an insight of what it was like dealing with, you know, adults and on a day-to-day basis when you're going from little people to big people.
Yeah, well, I think the first main difference was suddenly you're in all this PPE, and at times I think before this I've never been in that much PPE. So and also don't forget, so if, for example, if you did need to wear PPE, in pediatrics, the most I've ever worn it is literally to go into a cubicle to do whatever I need to do and then come out, and that's that. Whereas for a start, it's the whole of the IT was a red zone. So it basically meant that when you went through those subwards, so you have your donning and your doffing stations, and your donning is where you put on all your PPE. And as soon as you'd put all that PPE on, so the long blue gowns, the FFP3 masks that aren't that breathable, your visor, your hairnet, your gloves, everything that comes with it, you're suddenly like, okay, this is it now. I've got to stay in this PPE until I can have a break. And generally, I know there's been loads of things in the news about lack of PPE. We were very fortunate in our hospital. We never actually got to that point. There was a point where it was close, and we were told that we could only have 2 outfit changes as such. Basically, it means, so once you've donned, you go in, you do what you need to do. So that when it was at its worst, it was Easter. I remember it was Easter bank holiday weekend, and it was actually when I had COVID myself. But at that point, it wasn't an official symptom, so I still had to come into work. Obviously, I would have stayed off work if loss of taste and smell was an official symptom, but it wasn't. And I did ring and I said, is it okay for me to come into work? And they're like, yeah, it's not an official symptom, come in. So at this point, I had COVID myself, so I wasn't really feeling well at all. And then you're in all of this PPE, and then so that was the first major difference, is trying to adapt to that PPE. So that was just exhausting in itself, and it was a really hot weekend. And then, sorry, going back, I'm kind of off on 2 tangents here, but going back to that tangent was that weekend, that Easter weekend, when it was at its worst, there wasn't enough PPE, so you literally only had enough for 2 outfit changes. So you started shift at 7:45, so at 12 midday we could come out, and in your breaks you drink and you eat, and that's it. And then you go back in all your PPE, and then our next break was 5, 6. So you can't drink, eat, or anything between those times. So you literally at midday and then 6 p.m. and then that was it. So that was when it was at its worst, but fortunately it did get better, and they were actually really good at giving us breaks, because it is important. So that was the sort of the first major thing, was getting used to climatizing to all that PPE. Which I wasn't used to in pediatrics. And then it was just that, obviously these patients are so much bigger. We are used to babies, and even, I look after children up to 17, but on the whole, we're probably literally newborn to 11. So a lot smaller. And some of these patients, they were 160, 170 kilos. They were absolutely massive. So even things like doing your cares and your turns, it took 5 of you, and it was so hard. And where these patients were big, not all of them, but some of them, and you're in all your PPE, it was hot and sweaty. So I think that was another major thing to get used to. And then I think emotionally it was just so sad. These people just did not deserve to be in a hospital. Like I said, it could just be any of our parents. So it was just, it was really, really sad. And these people just didn't deserve anything. One day they're fine, they catch a virus, and then they're on a ventilator, fighting for their life. So I think that was really hard to comprehend. It was just really quite surreal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and also we're like in paediatrics, you're very much looking after the child and the family as a whole, but obviously where none of their families were there, that was really hard to adjust to. And we'd ring them and update them, but again, these patients were really, really sick, so from the get-go you were just doing everything for them, and actually it was so hard trying to, I mean, I made sure that I did find time to update the family, because I just do think that's very important. I think coming from paediatrics, it's very much like family-centered care, and that is drilled into you, and also you want to, but so I think I just kind of thought as well, like how hard, like if that was like for example, my mum and my dad, and like being at home, the other end of it, and just literally waiting all day for a phone call, or trying to, because a lot of people, they tried to ring, but when the nurses and doctors were so busy, it was actually so hard for people to answer the phone and update them. So I just think like also how awful must that be, being the other side of it. So to me, I found that really important, to updating the families, because I can't imagine anything worse than sitting there waiting for a phone call.
People in hospital, normally, family can visit, and obviously that was a huge change because of COVID. I mean, I think I've been in hospital twice, right, with a broken nose. Never been put right, unfortunately. So third time lucky in the future, maybe. But I've always had my mum there to support me, kind of thing. So that, must have been such a hard thing for people to in a patient's shoe, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But just kind of like you mentioned there, the hot weather in sort of the summertime, and I sort of look, we look back on our summer, we were quite lucky to be able to start going out again, and a little taste of normality, I guess, within the restrictions set out.
You see the chart, don't you? And it really was big, and in the summer, hardly, and obviously there were still some cases.
Yeah, it just tailed off.
Yeah.
But what was that sort of transition like for you guys? I mean, you must have, not back to normal, but there must have been some sense of relief and pressure on you on a day-to-day point of view. I would have thought anyway, I'm asking you. And then sort of where does that lead into now where we are? Because it's just gone, through the roof again. So it'd be good if you could just explain a little bit around, the summer to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, the summer, to be honest, it was great in many ways, because we had a nice summer, didn't we, in terms of the weather. So it kind of meant that like on your days off, that was nice. You could actually just go for a nice walk or sit in the park. So we were there. So I went up to adult ITU the end of March, April, May, June. So I was there till like June time. So the summer actually meant that I could go back to paediatrics, and it was just so nice being back. And also it's just what isn't it? Like I love being a paediatric nurse, like it's amazing, and that is ultimately why I signed up to nursing, is for the children. Although saying that, I actually did have a really good experience in adult services and whatnot, they're all lovely. But yeah, I think that was quite surreal. Then you'd gone from like just pure exhaustion for like 3 months, and then went back to paediatrics, and actually it was a really nice summer. Again, generally in the hospital it's quieter in the summer because you don't have all the winter bugs going around. But and I think in adult services that also did improve, and to be honest, the adult nurses that work in adult intensive care, they've done so incredibly well, because they've literally been there the first peak, then they've been there the whole of the summer. Like, yes, the cases were lower and they didn't always have COVID patients, so that it meant that they didn't have to wear the PPE all the time, but then they've obviously had like an awful winter. So I feel like, I mean, I had 3 months there and then another month like this spike, but I mean, credit to them. They've done it for a whole year, which is just incredible. And they were all absolutely amazing, like crazy. But yeah, so I think the summer was nice, definitely nicer. And then I think there's the whole element where like everyone had a nice summer, and people on the whole, I think, were sticking to the rules. And then I think the frustrating part was when we went into winter, the cases were all rising again from like end of October, November time. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, it must have been October time, because then we went back into that lockdown in November. But the most frustrating thing is the cases didn't come down, or they came down like, like not very significantly at all, very small amount. And then Boris lets everyone out the lockdown again, beginning of December. And obviously December's a time where it's like the build up to Christmas and everyone's all excited and everyone wants to get together, fair enough. And then it's like basically no one should have been let out during that period. And then obviously Christmas happened, and then as soon as Christmas happened, like the numbers are just through the roof, worse than last time. Like the second wave was, in terms of numbers, was worse than last time. And it was just crazy again. Like mental.
Yeah.
And I just think, like, look, you kind of just think, I think everyone the second time round was just looking around thinking, how has this happened again? Like, we've all done this the first time round, and then you'd think, surely, I mean, I didn't actually know this, but it's a thing that the second peak of or second wave of the pandemic is actually worse, which I find really interesting. So I think that, like, surely the first wave will be even worse because it's unexpected and you don't know what to do. And you think by a second wave, you're like, right, we can deal with this now. But I mean, it was worse than the first wave in terms of contingency plans. It was better. It was better staffed, and people obviously had that experience from the first wave. But in terms of the numbers and the staffing and everything, that was awful. And the other big difference is so, like I've said myself, a lot of my friends, my nursing friends, we all went in with COVID because it was not an official symptom when we had it. Like, we were knackered and couldn't taste or smell, but where we hadn't spiked temperature, I didn't have a cough, and they were the only two symptoms at the time, the first time round, we were going into work. Whereas this time round, one, it's strictly like those three symptoms, you cannot come in, and two, because of the isolation and track and trace, it meant so many nurses and doctors were off sick because they were either being tracked and traced by someone they've been in contact with, or they had symptoms themselves. So in terms of staffing, it was actually a lot worse this time round. And again, I mean, yeah, the numbers were really, really bad again. And obviously, things are coming down now, but I mean, they're coming down slowly. It's still really bad in the hospital. So yeah, I think the whole thing, I think the second wave, I think nurses and doctors and everyone, physios, OTs, everyone in the healthcare setting just felt like, we've done this, we put our all into it last time and we got through it. This time round, we're still obviously going to put our all into it, but everyone is exhausted. Like, we've done this before. We don't, like, it's just rubbish that we're now in a situation where we're doing it again. This it's preventable. They basically should just waited for the vaccine to be rolled out. But yeah, so I think second time round was, I think, mentally harder because and I think everyone's found that during lockdown, haven't they? Like, the first time round, it's like, it's hard, but it's almost like a novelty, like, we'll get through this. Second time round, it's like, we're back in this situation, like, I just want normal life, I can't do it second time round. So I think everyone has found that in every aspect of life, not just in nursing or in the hospital, just everyone in general, I think, has found the second wave harder.
100%. Like, because I feel like in the first lockdown, because it was new, everyone was kind of working from home. Everyone was like almost a bit excited by that working from home now. And then it was kind of like, some people were furloughed, so then they were like just going about their day. And there was a bit of hope because summer was coming up, the cases were starting to drop. So everyone had that hope. With the second one, I've just felt like I haven't felt any hope. And every time there was a hope, like an announcement of the vaccine, Boris is on that same day and he goes, I don't want anyone to get their hopes up. It's like, no, mate, we need a bit of, give us something to like cling on to. So I felt like this second one is not dragged out, but like you said, mentally, because people are like, well, when is it going to end? And is there going to be number 3? And are we going to be able to see family in the summer and stuff like that? Emily, I just wanted to ask you a question, because I know a couple of paramedics and I've asked them the same thing. Obviously, there are some people in the world that will deny absolutely everything, whether it's, government conspiracy or whatever it is, pandemic. But for someone it annoys me, but for someone that was there, living it, and like you said, helping these grown people, mums and dads on ventilators, life support, when you see that sort of stuff, does it impact what nurses think? Do you get annoyed by that sort of thing, or do you kind of just brush it off and think, you believe what you want to believe, but I know I know I'm here and what's happening?
What, as in people not believing that it's actually how it is in hospitals?
The conspiracy.
They're like, oh no, there's no way. The numbers are fake. There's no one on ventilators. Look how many.
Like, tell you my favourite, the vaccine tracking device. Like, what are people going to do? Walk around being bloody TomTom sat navs? But
as a nurse, does that, because obviously, I mean, you're there, you know what's going on. Does it bother you any of you, like nurses? Does it bother you, or do you just kind of think, nah, like you just think what you think? We know what's going on.
Yeah, I feel personally like that hasn't really affected me too much, because I feel like everyone that I'm surrounded by, so all my family and friends, like I literally have my family and friends have just been absolutely amazing through all of this. Yeah. So they, if anything, they're like, oh gosh, like tell us about the hospital. Everyone like is very interested and wants to know, which actually is really, really refreshing, because they actually want to know what is going on in the hospital. Whereas I think some people can be a bit like, oh, I don't really want to hear about that. Like, can't really be bothered. It's not going to affect me. But actually, I do think it's really important to talk about it and to actually like hear the reality of what goes on. And I've always been very transparent with it, with like, this is the situation, this is what's been happening, because I think if you sugarcoat things, then people actually don't realize the severity of it. And I do think it has been really good in the media as well, where they have shown snippets of what it's like in intensive care, and like that, the videos that you see, everyone in their PPE, everyone's stressed, all the alarm bells going off and ventilator settings going off, that is what it's like. Like there is no, that is like a very true representation of what it's like in a hospital. So I think, yeah, I mean, when people say, like I said, people personally around me have not said any of those things, and I know that it's been in the media a little bit, and there's been a few like protests and stuff in London, but I mean, I just turned a blind eye to it because I just think it's a load of rubbish, really.
It's certainly the right attitude to have.
On here.
Good word selection as well with the rubbish, because I felt something else was coming then.
Yeah, we might have had to get a little censor out.
It really was.
Yeah, but no, Emily, I mean, this has been incredible insight and sort of storytelling from your side. We really appreciate, you know, you sharing this with us and with the viewers. Just before we sort of round this up, let's talk about Emily McInnes.
Yes.
Said it right. And your, you know, what does the future look like for you? For, you know, I know you've gone through an exciting move. So it'd be good to sort of hear about why you've made that move and what sort of the future holds for you as a person in your career.
Well, so yes, I have moved hospitals. So yeah, my previous hospital, absolutely incredible. Like, was there for 4.5 years, and honestly, I've had the best 4.5 years. Have learned so much. Have met the most amazing people. So I have nothing but like happy memories there. Like obviously, like in it with nursing and anything in healthcare, you can have your ups and downs, but on the whole, like it was really amazing. Great place to work. So that was that. And then I think, because I had a little taster of the intensive care setting, I thought, do you know what? I actually do feel like I want to continue this, just to kind of consolidate what I've learned so far. And where adults is very, very different to paediatrics, I thought I've had a taste of intensive care in adults. I now want to kind of transfer some of those skills over to paediatrics and follow it through. So my next, I don't know, like year, 2 years, however many years, depends how much I like it. So my new hospital in paediatric intensive care now, which, yeah, so far it's been great. I mean, I've only been there for 2 weeks, but so far so good. Everyone seems lovely and friendly, and I think I want to learn loads. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this next challenge. I mean, I'm always like pushing myself and trying to challenge myself, and I sometimes think, why am I doing that? But anyway, it's going well so far. So yeah, that's
pleased to hear it.
Yeah, amazing. Well, listen, Emily, thank you so much. You know, and we know you're our friend as well, but it's been amazing to hear like what you've been dealing with over the past year. We know the ins and outs as well. Me, Jesse, we think you're absolute heroes. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. You are our first guest, and I cannot think of a better way to have a first guest podcast with the wonderful hero, Emily. And thank you so much. And I'm not gonna lie, I want to do this again. So we will definitely
be back in touch, my friend.
Back in touch, and let's do this again. And hopefully we can do it next time in the same room.
I mean, that would be nice, wouldn't it? And do you know what I also want to say is, like, I feel like a lot of people have been like, like, you know, all of you NHS workers, you've, you know, been working so hard, you've done amazingly, which, you know, is so nice to hear. But I also do think that all of you guys as well, like everyone working from home, like, I don't think I could do that. And like, yes, we're going into the hospital and, you know, potentially putting our lives at risk and whatnot, and dealing with very stressful situations. I do also feel like I feel fortunate in a way that I have actually managed to get out of the house, and I've been working with a team of people, and I've still kind of, you know, although it's been in a hospital setting, I'm very close with my colleagues, and I have been able to see them, and I've had that kind of socialization element. Whereas I do think a credit to all of you guys as well, like working from home, because that's not easy. And I just think in general, like, I think everyone throughout this pandemic has just been like amazing, and everyone has gone kind of above and beyond, gone out of their comfort zone, and it's not easy for anyone. So I feel like, you know, you guys have done well too.
Well, Jake's had me for company the past sort of month or so. So
and it's been very difficult working from home.
It has been, exactly right. But listen, we're going to round it up. Just echoing what Jake said, you're an absolute babe for coming on, and we really appreciate you, you know, giving us a story, and for, you know, being our first guest. So thank you very much. So see us out. Take care.
You're welcome. Take care.